Well, hello and a very warm welcome to the Business Analysis Conference Europe Extra. For those of you that didn't manage to catch the very first episode of BA Conference Europe Extra, this is a sort of informal live stream that's broadcast in the breaks of the main session. It's authentically live. It's probably going to be a bit chaotic at times. Anything could happen. There'll probably be a few technical blips along the way, but we are sure that you will forgive us for those because, of course, it really is the content that matters. We've got a whole range of speakers that are going to talk to us over the next 6 or 7 sessions. We're streaming throughout the conference in the breaks. There are 8 sessions in total. Do check us out on the main conference agenda. Even more exciting is that we're actually streaming simultaneously to YouTube. And what this means is if you've got colleagues who perhaps can't be at the BA Conference Europe, but you want to give them a bit of a flavour, create a bit of jealousy about what they're missing, well, you know, why not send them the links? They can at least get a little bit of insight from some of the fantastic topics that we'll be hearing about over these 2 days. Now, the Business Analysis Conference Europe is always known for being a very social conference. It's social when it's in person. It's going to be equally social, or differently social, I should say, as a virtual conference. So do make use of the networking facilities on the conference platform. But also, let's connect with each other through social media. The hashtag for this event is BA2020. So if you're on LinkedIn, or if you're on Twitter, or any of the other social media networks, do get on there, start sharing content. You might share photos, you might share perhaps some notes that you've taken. And that's a great way of connecting with people beyond and between the conference, and also letting people outside the conference have a little bit of a peek of what we're talking about here. So getting some stuff out to the wider community as well. Now you can get in touch with us here at the studio. Perhaps at some point in the conference program you might want to give a shout out to a speaker or a shout out to a colleague who's tuned in either through the conference or on YouTube. You can leave us a voicemail or you can send us a WhatsApp message. Now if you pick up the phone and ring +44 330 321 8481, don't worry, it won't be a real person that answers, it will be a voicemail. And there's a very good chance we may play that voicemail live on air, so you can get your 5 minutes of fame. So maybe a takeaway or something you've learned, or just something you want to celebrate or say. If you don't like using the phone or don't want to, you can use WhatsApp on the same number, and you could share a photo or a video or whatever you like. So that number is +44 330 321 8481. Plug it into your phone now, because you might want to perhaps you know, share some of that information a bit later. So add it to your phone so you can get involved. So on this episode, we have 2 fantastic guests on 2 really intriguing and important topics. Have you ever wondered what emotional agility is? Well, we're going to talk to a guest about that topic in just a moment. Or perhaps you've had issues with workplace culture and are wondering what workplace culture is and why it matters. Well, we've got you covered there too. We've got 2 fantastic guests who are going to talk about these very topics. So this brings us on to our first guest, or first guests I should say. We have 2 guests joining us for this section. So if you have ever wondered what emotional agility is or how it relates to our role as BAs, well then you'll want to check out the session on the 24th of September. It's a half-day workshop entitled The Emotionally Agile Business Analyst, which is being run by Namrata Shivastava, who is a business analyst at Shell, and Adrie Kuil, who is a senior business analyst at Shell. But they agreed to give us a little bit of a sneak peek into what they'll be covering on that session. So, Adrie, Namrata, over to you.
I am Namrata Shivastava, and today, along with Adrie Kuil, I am going to talk on the topic the emotionally agile business analyst. You might be wondering what has emotional agility got to do with BA? To give it a thought, let me give you an example and you will find out yourself how and why. Imagine a day in the life of a BA. What are the typical activities that you do? To name it, facilitating a requirement illustration workshop? I'm sure you all must be doing it. As a facilitator, you need to be fully engaged and be in the moment with full focus and attention. Now, on this particular meeting, you're trying hard, trying everything to be in the moment, but you are getting distracted with all your thoughts because you had some meeting yesterday night or maybe an hour before and you're not able to completely focus. Now, that's where emotional agility comes into picture. As a facilitator, you need to be fully engaged and be in the present moment. So if you are an emotionally agile BA, you adapt, you have an ability to observe and adapt your emotions according to the situation. So in this particular case, we are going to teach you several techniques how to get into the present moment, which is in line with your intention. If that's not enough, let me give you another example. Another example which is very much relevant with the current situation that we all are in is having a growth mindset. A mindset of growth and self-compassion. Imagine you are doing a root cause analysis of a situation and you are not able to conclude. You're trying hard and then you start blaming yourself. You start judging yourself, calling yourself as incapable and starting thinking, maybe next time when you get such opportunity, you won't try to get into it and you start pushing yourself back. And that's where these techniques, what we'll be presenting you in our workshop, will come into picture. It will teach you and provide you various ways on how you can inculcate a learning mindset. We'll be providing you how you can be self-compassion and be in the present moment. There are a few other exercises and techniques which will be covering it. My friend Adrie will highlight you. Over to you, Adrie.
Thank you, Namrata. As a further example, let's take a BA who is afraid to speak up during meetings because the BA thinks he or she might say something stupid. We will do an exercise on how not to get triggered by your negative thoughts so that these thoughts don't hinder your performance. To be effective and personally fulfilled, a BA should focus on what is important to him or her. We will do an exercise in which you will determine your core values. These core values can then guide your actions and decisions. Everything that you have learned during our workshop will be of no use if you don't take any action. We will do an exercise that gives you insight in how your thoughts and behaviors are moving you away from what is important to you, and to then define actions that will take you towards what is important to you. Namrata and I hope to see you in our workshop. Thank you for your attention.
Fantastic. Well, some really interesting insight and a bit of a taster there into what you might be able to expect in that workshop. As a reminder, that workshop is entitled The Emotionally Agile Business Analyst. It's on the 24th. It's a half-day workshop, still seats available. Massive thanks to Adrie and Namrata for giving that little overview, that little taster. So just before we move on to our next guest, we have a competition running through the BA Conference Europe Extra programme. You could win a ticket, a 2-day ticket to the BA Conference Europe 2021. Now imagine not having to write a business case to get a ticket. Imagine not having to convince your manager that the fund and the spend is worthwhile. Imagine not having to speak to the folks in procurement to get them to send a purchase order and all of the joy that goes along with that. Well, it's even more exciting because, of course, we've no idea whether it's going to be real world or virtual. Anyone's guess is could be right on that, really. And all you need to do is continue to be social, as I'm sure everyone, all of us are, but spread that social engagement to social media. Use the BA2020 hashtag on LinkedIn and Twitter. And every time you use it, that will count as one entry to the competition. So all you need to do is keep tweeting, keep mentioning BA 2020 as you probably are already. Bonus points if you include an image, which might be maybe a mind map you've drawn or a sketch note or whatever, or even a selfie if you're watching a live stream. You might want to share your biggest takeaways, and it can just be one line, like, I took away from Nigel Owen's keynote this. It's a great way of us also letting other people see just an insight into what's happening, so we can spread the learning, spread the experience beyond the conference itself. So do make the most of that competition. The winner will be announced shortly after the conference closes, and of course T's and C's do apply. You can see our website or ask us for details. So it gives me real pleasure to introduce our next live guest. This is someone who in many ways needs no introduction. She'll be known to many of us. You may know Suzanne Robertson from her books. She co-authored Mastering the Requirements Process, which is really one of the staple reads for anyone involved in business analysis and specifically requirements engineering as well. More recently co-authored Business Analysis Agility, keynote international speaker, and involved with creating the Valere model. So Suzanne, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Adrian. It's lovely to be here.
And Suzanne, one thing I didn't mention is, of course, you're currently in the process of writing another book around workplace culture.
Yes, it's a project we've been doing for the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Coming close to finishing.
The sort of, it's the final sprint before the finish line.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, culture's a really interesting thing, isn't it? And it's a hard thing to define. And I was thinking as I was listening to the opening keynote, so as I was listening to Nigel Owens, and clearly a very powerful, moving story with real gravity, but it made me think about adversity and how sometimes actually, if there's a toxic culture, that can actually make people feel real adversity. And of course, I wouldn't want to in any way underplay the adversity that Nigel felt. But do you think that's the case? Do you think culture can actually, I mean, one thing Nigel says was only when we accept there are issues can we change things. Do you think a similar sort of pattern applies to culture?
I think very, very definitely, because a bad culture stops things being happy, stops things happening. It creates friction. You could think about it as friction. If you've got a good culture, then it facilitates the way that elements in a workplace work together. I'm saying elements, people, of course, and procedures and deadlines and all the things that happen in a workplace. And if you've got a good culture, these things flow together. But if you've got a bad culture, you get these horrible crunches. And that's very much the adversity. That's where a lot of adversity raises its head, and people are usually unhappy.
And as you were speaking there, the analyst question that came to me, and it's probably somewhat of an unfair question, but is friction between what and what? Is it, say, a friction between a person's values as they feel them and the values they're being asked to live in their environment, or is it some other type of friction?
I think it's both. I think to understand a culture and improve it, you have to understand how people feel. So that's one thing. The other part of it is the way that the organization behaves can sometimes cause a tremendous amount of friction, even though nobody's meaning to do that. But in order to understand it and improve it, you have to be able to step back, and you have to be able to look at what it is.
Which brings me to my next question, Suzanne, because I think culture is a term that's thrown around a lot.
Yes.
And I mean, we might talk about differences in, say, national cultures and norms and customs. What would you, if you were to define workplace culture, how would you define it, and how would you specifically say, or why would you say specifically it's relevant for business analysts?
Well, workplace culture is, we spend a lot of time thinking about this. What do we mean by this? Because people so often talk about culture and sagely nodding their heads as to, oh, it's the culture won't let us do it, the culture will let us do it, or whatever. And we've come up with a way of thinking about this, that culture is a set of shared beliefs and observable behaviors. Now, given that, if you go back to what you said about national culture, for example, think about the French. That's a good example. They have a shared belief. French people have a shared belief in the importance of food. French people spend on average 2 hours, 13 minutes a day at the table together.
Wow.
So that's an observable behavior. Another observable behavior is French people, even when they're working full time, they'll go to the market every day and get the very best of everything. They cook 3 meals a day. They really believe in the importance of food. Now, so their shared belief is very, very strong. You won't necessarily understand the shared belief until you start noticing the behaviors and then asking questions. And similarly, and there are lots and lots of examples around us. I mean, a belief in global warming, for example. If there's a shared belief in global warming, then people who believe that will behave in a certain way with recycling and everything else that we do, if we have that shared belief. Now to get to the second part of your question, and that is, what can a business analyst do about it? And the big light came on for me. I was thinking about this and I thought, hang on, we have to be able to get to the shared beliefs, because if we don't understand the shared beliefs, we can't improve them, we can't adjust the environment. But we can't go to people and say, what are your shared beliefs? Tell us all about your shared beliefs. It's not what people tell you. As a business analyst, however, we are trained to look at observable behaviors and to mine them, to observe them, to do what we do as business analysts, to trawl really, and to say, oh, that person seems to be terribly happy. I wonder why. What's making them happy? Every day at a certain time, they seem to just spread joy. And it's only by digging and asking questions and being a business analyst that we can understand what the shared beliefs are. And for us, once you get to the shared beliefs, we can then say, okay, are they productive? Are they not productive? Are they true? What can we do to improve the situation, to go from what we might say a bad culture to a better culture, a good culture?
That's really interesting, Suzanne. And I was thinking as you were talking there of a very specific project I worked on quite a long time ago, where part of the project involved, for one part of an organisation, standardising the desk layout. And this was back in the day where physical paper flowing around an office was more common than it is now. And people had trays, like in trays, out trays. Yes. Yeah. And there was a decision, because some people had 3 trays, some people had 2. And there was a decision to standardise on 2 trays. And I was flabbergasted that it caused real dismay amongst the people who had 3 trays. Almost to the talk of sort of HR and union type conversations, not quite that far. And I was really surprised. But when I dug beneath it, although I didn't know I was going through that pattern that you mentioned there, what it was about was people who joined before a certain date were given, they used to be given 3 trays. So 3 trays was a status symbol. To the point where it was almost like, oh, they're a 2-tray person, go and ask a 3-tray person type of thing, although it wasn't ever explicitly said that way. So we can look out for those little symbols, presumably, alongside the behaviours.
Yeah, well, we have found that there are so many behaviours. And of course, part of what we've been doing is to study them, to try to identify them so that we've got some good checklists for helping us as business analysts.
Yeah.
And we came across more and more shared beliefs. And so we came across many more shared beliefs. And there were too many. But we started to see a theme in terms of clusters. You know, the observable behaviors led us to the shared beliefs, led us to a bit more understanding. And what we've done is we have grouped the shared beliefs and their observable behaviors into what we call 6 drivers of culture. And those 6 drivers, I'll talk about them in my talk later on today. But one of them, for example, the first one on the list is the shared belief. Sorry, the driver that says, what is the perception of the value of people in this organization? Now, there are lots of shared beliefs that attach to that. But if we can use that as a starting point, so it's almost like as a BA, we've got a list of 6 things that we can use as a starting point to help us to assess the culture. Well, assess, actually a better word is to understand the culture.
Yes.
Because if you can understand it and you can quantify it to a certain extent, then you can look for places where you can tweak it, where you can make improvements, where you can do things to improve toxic aspects of the culture.
And I suppose that's why it really matters, isn't it, Suzanne, that the assessment, the understanding actually then potentially enables us to cultivate a different culture, or to cultivate an environment where a more sympathetic culture can emerge. And as BAs, we have influence without authority. We can sort of nudge it along.
We can. I was lead BA on a project once where when I first went in there, I mean, everybody was so down. I mean, the observable behaviors, nobody really talked to anybody else very much. They were apathetic. They, worked short hours. And really, after a lot of digging and getting to know them, doing some analysis, really, over a period of time, I realized that the first driver, this driver of being valued as people, they believed that they weren't valued at all.
Yeah.
And it was then once one understood that, we did lots of things, to help to move them together so that they were physically more in touch with each other, to give their team a name, to lots of little games even that gave them a personality that we could then present to the rest of the organization, and to see that, in fact, they were more valued than they realized.
Fantastic.
So their shared belief wasn't necessarily right.
Yeah. So it was actually a misbelief, a shared misbelief.
Exactly.
Fantastic. So, Suzanne, I am absolutely sure people want to know more about this topic. They'll want to stay in touch with you. They'll want to follow you and connect with you. Remind us, when is your session? And also, how can people stay in touch?
Well, it's this morning, Adrian. Now you're going to have to help me here. It's 11:40.
11:40.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm going to talk about the drivers, the shared beliefs, and the observable behaviours, certainly. And to get in touch with me, of course, on LinkedIn, Suzanne Robertson. You can also have a look at the Atlantic Systems Guild website, systemsguild.com. And you'll see more information about the work on culture, along with all the other things we're doing in the Guild. And
lots of interesting articles and links and things to help us as BAs on there as well. So
yes, and also the Valeria website, which is linked to the Systems Guild, has got quite a few more articles as well.
Fantastic, excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Suzanne. A fascinating topic, one that we could talk about for hours, I'm sure. And best of luck with the book, and do let us know when we can buy it, when it's out.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Thank you. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. Fantastic. So much there for us as BAs. I mean, I'm reflecting on what Suzanne said there about the different drivers for culture. And I don't think I'd previously explicitly made the connection between observable behaviours and underlying culture. I remember once doing a piece of work for an organisation that when I was speaking to them initially, they told me they had a really flat hierarchy. Everyone's the same. And then I got there and there were marked parking bays for the exec, with the most senior being closest to the door. And now I'm thinking, well, that was a symbol and observable behaviour, which was actually perhaps saying that the culture was, the expressed culture was different from the actual culture. So you get that difference. So definitely, if you're interested, do attend Suzanne's session. If you can't, if you've got a session clash, remember you can actually access the recordings as well, so you can catch up on demand. So do remember, as you're taking stuff away from this conference, remember to keep it social. Use the BA 2020 hashtag to share your learnings along the way. Might be something you've picked up from one of these live streams, might be something you've picked up from one of the many, many great sessions which are happening over the next few days. So we are next back at 1 p.m. So set your diary, set your reminder now for 1 p.m. during the lunch break, but we're on for half an hour, so you can either watch with a sandwich or have your sandwich after. And we're back at 1 p.m. We have Bradley Stott, who's going to be talking about collaboration. A word that we say a lot, but have you ever really thought about what it means to collaborate as a BA, and how collaboration can perhaps help us move from being a good to a great BA? We also have Michelle Shakechef, who'll be talking about role standardization. Have you ever felt that maybe your role isn't well defined? Or have you ever had that feeling that you're misunderstood? If you have, that'll be one that you'll definitely want to check out. And we also, bonus, we have a third session on event storming by Rosanna Choi Ang and Poppy Bruce. So if you do tune in, another reason to tune in at 1 p.m. is the timing is really, really tight. So you'll see the stressed expression as we try and cram in as much content as we can in the session. Well, that concludes the second episode of BA Conference Europe Extra. I do hope you've enjoyed the session. The 10:40 sessions will be starting in the main conference arenas in just a few moments, so you'll want to close the YouTube window now, pick your session. Oh, and by the way, if you want to hear more of my voice, I'm speaking at 10:40, so you can come and hear me. If you're fed up with my voice, which would be totally understandable, then don't. But I hope to see at least some of you in my session as well. So thank you, and see you at 1 p.m.